Imagine living in a house made of ice with wolves as your neighbors. Sometimes even your friends. Sounds wild already. Right now, here's the shocker. In this culture, it's perfectly fine for a woman to sleep with a visiting guest. No scandal, no shame, just tradition. But that's only the beginning. The Eskimos survive in one of the most brutal places on Earth with customs so unusual. You'll wonder how such a world even exists. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear will flip everything you thought you knew about life and culture upside down. The Inuit live in the most unforgiving corners of the Earth. Alaska, northern Canada, Greenland, lands where winter never truly leaves, and where the cold can burn your skin faster than fire. 4 months at a time, the sun doesn't rise. The sea freezes into a solid endless plain. Here, nothing grows. Food doesn't come from fields. It must be hunted from the sea and the snow. Seals, whales, walruses. These were not luxuries, they were lifelines. Every part of an animal was used, the meat for food, the fat for oil, the bones for tools, the skins for clothing. Without this resourcefulness, a family wouldn't last a single winter. Life here forged people who were tough, practical, and utterly dependent on one another. And in a place where survival often meant the difference between sharing or dying, even intimacy became something shared. To the Inuit, welcoming a guest was more than just a polite gesture. It was a sacred duty. In the past, when a traveler arrived, he was not just given shelter and food. He was given total acceptance into the household, sometimes even offered the most personal connection the family could give, the company of the wife. Among some Inuit groups historically misnamed Eskimos, there existed a misunderstood and often sensationalized tradition was wife sharing, which was far from casual or promiscuous, and was deeply rooted in the harsh realities of Arctic survival. In an environment where temperatures could drop to -50°C, resources were scarce, and cooperation meant life or death. Welcoming a visiting hunter or traveler with food, shelter, and sometimes the temporary company of one's wife was seen as the highest form of hospitality, trust, and alliance building. In certain regions, this was part of formal friendship pacts that strengthened bonds between families, offered survival insurance in case of a hunter's death, and occasionally helped maintain genetic diversity in small isolated populations. The custom followed strict etiquette. The woman's consent was often required, reciprocity was expected, and the arrangement was temporary, ending when the guest departed. Early explorers like Kud Rasmussen and anthropologists such as Franz Boas documented such exchanges, noting how they cemented peace and mutual obligation, even as missionaries condemned them as immoral. With the spread of Christianity, permanent settlements, and changing social values in the mid-19th century, the practice declined sharply, and today it survives mostly in memory and anthropological records. Stripped of the distortions of colonial imagination, it was not about casual pleasure, but about saying to another person in the frozen wilderness, "I trust you with my life, and with the most important person in my life." Women were not silent in these traditions. Inuit women were respected for their strength and skill. Without them, no family could survive. They built and maintained igloos, stitched clothing that could keep out the killing cold, cooked meals from whatever the hunt provided, and preserved food for the endless winters. They were healers, teachers, and keepers of the stories. They taught the young how to fish, how to read the ice, how to respect the animals they hunted. Their work was as essential as any hunter's spear. When a wife was offered to a guest, it was not always a blind command from the husband. Some women accepted it as part of their role in keeping peace and friendship alive between families. Others refused if they felt unsafe or unwilling. The decision in many cases was shared. The arrival of a guest was an event. After the evening meal, often rich seal meat dripping with hot fat, the conversation would turn to the guest's journey, the dangers faced, the hunts missed or won. Then, when the fire was low and the night pressed in, the host might make his offer. It was rarely crude, sometimes it was said outright. Other times it was understood without words, a quiet nod or a simple invitation for the guest and wife to share a sleeping space. The igloo was small, privacy was limited, but in that confined space, bonds were made that could last a lifetime. And in the morning, life continued as normal. There was no shame, no gossip, only the quiet satisfaction that hospitality had been honored in its fullest form. With the arrival of missionaries, traders, and modern laws, this tradition faded. Outside religions labeled it sinful, Western morality called it indecent. Modern housing, technology, and the blending of cultures slowly erased the old customs. In traditional Inuit society, intimacy and relationships were shaped less by romantic ideals and more by the brutal demands of survival in the Arctic. Marriages were often arranged by elders to strengthen alliances with young brides, frequently paired with older skilled hunters who could provide food and protection. Polygamy was common, especially polygyny, where a man might have several wives if he could support them. While rare cases of polyandry served to reinforce trust and cooperation between families, courtship could be direct and pragmatic, sometimes involving symbolic bride kidnapping, nighttime visits during gatherings, or displays of hunting and tool-making skill to prove worthiness. Childbirth was a dangerous, intimate act carried out in small, warm spaces within homes or specially built snow shelters with midwives or female relatives assisting. Caribou fur swaddling newborns and breastfeeding lasting 4 years to ensure survival. In this harsh world, intimacy was deeply tied to practicality, with every custom from marriage to birth to partner sharing serving not just emotional needs, but the vital goal of keeping people alive in one of the most unforgiving climates on Earth. In the intimate world of traditional Inuit homes, whether carved from snow as temporary igloos or built from stone, driftwood, and sod for longer settlement, privacy was almost non-existent. These structures were designed with survival in mind, not personal space, so entire families, sometimes spanning 3 generations, would live, sleep, eat, and work within the same small, dimly lit chamber. The air was heavy with the scent of burning seal oil lamps, damp fur, and human breath, and the soft hiss of the wind outside only heightened the sense of enclosure. In this environment, intimacy between couples was far from the secluded candle-lit image we imagine today. Sleeping platforms raised above the floor and covered with thick caribou or seal skin doubled as the family's bed, lounge, and workspace. Often only a thin hanging skin, a bent snow partition, or even just the turn of a body served as a wall between lovers and watchful relatives. Because sound carried easily through the compact, curved interiors, couples learned the art of silence, careful movements, muffled whispers, and the stillness that comes from knowing every sound might be overheard. Intimate moments often happened late at night when the house was blanketed in the deep breathing of sleeping children and elders. In the coldest months, this closeness was also a matter of survival. Body heat was precious, and lovers shared furs, not just for passion, but for warmth. In larger semi-subterranean sod houses, where families could create small-side alcoves or narrow sleeping cubbies, there was slightly more privacy, but it was still nothing compared to modern standards. Everyone understood that life in the Arctic demanded cooperation and tolerance. What happened behind a fur curtain was not discussed, and people turned their eyes and ears away out of respect. In this way, intimacy and survival were bound together, shaped by an unspoken agreement that in the unforgiving polar night, warmth and companionship were as vital as food or shelter. Today, Inuit communities still value hospitality, but the offering of a spouse is a rare and almost forgotten act, spoken of more in stories than in practice. Women now take on roles as leaders, business owners, and political voices. The igloo is now often replaced by wooden houses with electric heat. Snowmobiles roar where sled dogs once ran. Yet the memory of these customs remains. To the Inuit elders, they are reminders of a time when survival and trust were so deeply intertwined that even the most intimate bonds could be shared without shame. Because in the land of ice, it wasn't just about living together, it was about staying alive together.